your hand.
Papa's documentary, scene 4, action.
Well, we're back at Farmington, and I thought that I always wanted to get in business for myself, and of course the service station business didn't prove out after a couple of years, and so I went in the Dairy King business, the ice cream with a curl on top. Well, that too was a mistake. I went and borrowed $15,000, built a little Dairy King like a Dairy Queen, and it was all right for a couple of months, but boy, oh boy, when those cool September nights that happen in West Virginia, you know, in September, I mean, back in the 50s, you know, there just wasn't any traffic. And you had to have cars to drive up and get your, you know, the ice cream with a curl on top. No traffic, no business, you know. I'd sit there, you know, hours on end, maybe take in, you know, $16. You know, ice cream costs $14. I got $2. What do I want to do with it? Boy, you talking about depression. Yeah, you had the debt, see. But I could always sell. I had the ability to sell. I knew that I had to sell, but I didn't like selling tires. And I could sell them, but I just didn't have a feel for it. You know, if it was imported roses, I may have done better, but it was tires. So anyway, in spite of all that, I went in business with my brother-in-law, and we went into the tire business and the gas station business and so on. And that kind of, you know, old hat until finally we had a General Tire and Rubber convention at the Mayflower Hotel in Akron, Ohio. And my brother Russ and myself and a little guy by the name of Sam Larry, who's just about on death row now with dialysis, and lived right behind my son Sam, you know. And we went to the convention to Mayflower Hotel, and I met this guy. Everybody had on the lapel the name and where we were from, and I met this guy called Joe Jones from Detroit. And one thing led to another, you know. After 3 martinis, you start talking a lot. On an empty stomach. And this guy Joe Jones, he was a Tar Heel from North Carolina, but he was the manager of General Tire and Rubber Company in Detroit. He said, I just want to ask you something, Peter. He said, sell me a set of tires. Tell me how you'd sell me a set of tires. I didn't know who this guy was, you know, but he was big whiskey in Detroit, see. So I went into my sales mode. He said, you're awesome.
What'd you tell him?
I just told him how I'd sell a set of tires, no big deal.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he liked my voice, how my nose looked. I don't know what he thought about me. I had a crew cut, which I hated all my life. I said, you know, I'm just a...
You have that mustache?
Nuh-uh. No, it came later.
Just a country boy.
Just a country boy. This guy blows me up like I'm some kind of King Kong. I said, you know, what the hell is this guy? Who the hell is this guy, you know? So finally, time passes, maybe a year and a half, and he said, you know, one of these days I'm gonna get you. I said, well, that remains to be seen, Joe. And so we moved the calendar about a year and a half forward, and here's another challenge for me. My brother sponsors my uncle from Italy. His name is John Battista. He's got 5 children, 4 daughters and 1 son. He's going to be a priest in a monastery. And my brother sponsors him, and he comes over. And finally, he comes over. And I'm going to tell you a story about Uncle Battista here in a minute or two. Don't let me get ahead of the game. And I meet him at my brother's home in Fairmont, West Virginia. And he's a nice little guy, but, you know, he's got 5 children over in Italy. And, you know, what is he doing over here? He's trying to make a few dollars. And, of course, he didn't make much there was not much progress in West Virginia. I mean, it was a coal mining town. He couldn't get a job in the coal mines in it because he couldn't talk English, speak English. And he got on to me, and we got pretty close. He liked wine, and I liked wine. And by the way, excuse me a minute. He said, "You know what I want you to do? I got 3 children." He says, "You gotta go to Cleveland and get yourself a job at the Ford Motor Company."
Who says this?
Uncle Batista. And he said, "When you go there, then, you know, you gotta give me a job there." The guy can't speak, you know, fork of tongue, you know, no
Yeah,
speaking
yeah.
English. He finally convinced me after about 2 or 3 months and says, "Are you ever gonna go to Cleveland, get you a job, and then bring me to Cleveland with you?" Because my brother got him a job. He was carrying 2 buckets of plaster for $1 an hour up flights of stairs because they were building a house, and that was his job. He said, "You know, I didn't come to this country to do this. Look at my hands, Pete." He laid it right on me. See, and I said, "Oh my God, I can't believe this." So I felt sorry for him. So anyway, he convinced me that I should go to Cleveland, see, leave my family, go up there and get him a job and me live with him. Now, come on, is this an obstacle course or what? Or a challenge? You call it what you want to. I said, you know, I got a lot of nani in me, so I said, you know, all right. I said, I'll see what I can do. So I go to Cleveland. They hired me the same day. I went to Cleveland Stamping Plant in Bedford, Ohio. It reminded me of this movie, It's a Wonderful Life. And I think of the movie was in Bedford, Ohio.
Falls. Bedford Falls.
Bedford Falls. I said, I can't believe this. Shut up. Anyway, every weekend or every other weekend when I'd go home, which was about 3.5 hours, he'd say, you know, "How you doing? Did you get me the job yet?" I said, "Uncle Batista," I said, "it's not easy." He said, "Listen, I want you to take this gallon of wine and a carton of Camel cigarettes to your boss." He knew my boss. I talked about Nick. In Italian, it's Nicola. I said, "Take this to Nicola," he said, "and tell him from your uncle. And take this picture to him for my son." He had a son who was in the priesthood. He's in a monastery, and tell him that I got to have a job to support my family. 4 girls and 1 boy. He's going to be a priest. So I said, all right, I'll do it. So I went to Ohio, Cleveland, near Cleveland.
Hey, Papa, what was your job when you were at the stamping plant?
I'll tell you in a minute.
All right.
So I went to Cleveland, and every other week, whenever the weather permitted, I'd go to Bedford, Ohio, and then I'd go back to Farmington, where I lived. I had 3 children. And I needed a job too, but the ice cream business was not too good, because you didn't sell any ice cream in wintertime, trust me. There's no movement. And I had to do something. I said, you know, I think I'll listen to my Italian uncle, and I better go to Cleveland and get me a job, because I need some money, right? So I did, and after I got entrenched in there and felt real good about it, he said, "Okay, you ready to bring me to Ohio with you?" My uncle kept pressuring me every week, so he wanted. I said, "All right, come on," you know. So anyway, I had 1 bedroom. There's only 1 bedroom, a little hot plate in the kitchen, where 2 or 3 other renters had to share the stove. The little hot plate, there was no stove. There's 2 burners on the little hot plate. Boy, you talking about biting a bullet. Well, there was only 1 bed, and of course it wasn't nothing like a king size bed. It was a broken down bed. It was, you know. So Uncle would cook up spaghetti and a little bologna and sauce and garlic in the morning, and I'd come off the night shift. He'd have what they call pasta asciutta, spaghetti, just, you know, pasta. I didn't like pasta every day. He'd make pasta every day. That's all he knew. He'd go down the stores down the street, he'd buy a little bit of bologna and chop it up, and then the sauce and a lot of garlic. We'd workers at the plant said, "What the hell you been eating?" He said, "Get the hell away from me." And I was on a stamping plant on a merry-go-round. If I sneezed, I blowed 4 workers. Four workers quit working. Oh, it's crazy. He said, "What you got to do?" He said, you got to take this gallon of wine, the carton of Camels, because he said, "Does your boss smoke?" I said, "Yeah, he smokes." I said, "Take him." "What kind?" I said, "He smokes Camels." So he bought him a carton of Camels, which he didn't have the money, and bought it and got a gallon of homemade wine from his friend in Fairmont. See? Well, I take it to the Cleveland stamping plant, and I said, "Nicole," I said, "my uncle sends you this. This is the guy that I want you to help me get a job for. It's going to be awful tough, Pete, because, he doesn't speak English. It's going to be tough." He said, "I'll tell you what." He said, here's a program of 40 danger signals. He said, "If you can teach your uncle to interpret these signals, overhead arcs are flying and this and that and the other, and if you can teach him these," he said, "I'll hire him." I said, "You got a deal, brother." So every night when I came home from work, I had an hour or 2 session with him, teaching him.
Hey, wait a minute. Did he already, the boss came in?
Not yet.
Thought he didn't hire him yet.
Not yet.
All right. Sorry.
He said, "If you can teach him these danger signals," he said, "I'll hire him." So every night I went to work and I taught him, and it was everything. Oh, just complete. This guy had an obsession. He said, "Listen, I'm going to learn these things," and so he did. And so I went to Nicole and I said, "Hey, Nick," I said, "I'm ready for you to listen to my uncle, because this guy has he's learned these signals that you said you'd hire him. Now, come on." "All right, bring him in." Well, we went in there. Now, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, we were on the 2nd floor where the big guys from Dearborn, Michigan were there from Ford Motor Company. And they're in this little cubicle of an office, about 4 or 5 of them in there. And they happened to look out and they saw me and Uncle Batista standing out there. So he asked Nick, he said, "Hey, Nick, who the hell are these guys out there? Why aren't they working? Who the hell are they?" Well, he said, Nick said, "One guy's employee here, and the other guy's his uncle. We're trying to get him a job." Well, he said, "What nationality?" He said, "Italian." He said, "Can he speak English?" Nick said, "No." He said, "How the hell are you going to hire him and he can't speak?" He said, "Bring him in here. I want to interview this guy that you want to hire." And there, Uncle Batista couldn't talk. "What's your name?" "Batista Juan." He was talking Italian. "What's your name?" I said, "Tell him your name." It just didn't communicate good, see? So right away he said, "Nick, you can't hire this guy. Can't speak English, nice guy, maybe a hard worker, but he can't be in this plant, 1,800 people in here. Big stamping plant. You can't have this guy in here. It doesn't know." Nobody said he knows the danger signals. No, he said, "You're not going to hire him." There's me and Uncle Batista and then all these guys, giants from Dearborn, Ford Motor Company. And all at once, Uncle Batista says in his own mind, in Italian, he says, "Sant'Antonio mio, apri le occhi." He says, "St. Anthony, open this guy's eyes up." And he made a 360 and said, "I'll tell you what, Nick. I changed my mind. If this guy can pass his eye test, go ahead and hire him. You place him." That's all there was to it.
Wow.
He passed at 20/20 his eyes, and the guy, the little immigrant, was hired in Ford Motor Company, worked 17 years.
No way.
Yeah, that's
And guess what? This guy would come around where I was working. He became a janitor with a little pail and a little scoop broom. That was his job, picking up cigarette butts and stuff like that. He'd come around and see me. He had a damn necktie on and a little blue shirt and a little whisk broom. I'm over there busting my clams on this
machine.
welding machine, merry-go-round. Bada-boom, 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 bada-boom. He come around, I said, I look over at him. He looked at me, he said, "Hey, buddy!" Like, you big dummy.
17 years.
It was a classic.
Wow.
But he got the pension the whole 9 yards, and he never missed a day's work. Never did. He'd walk to work, it was a mile and a half from the plant to the house. If he got a ride, fine. If he didn't, he never missed any work. He'd walk in the snow to work. He would, no way would he ever miss a shift. And every time he'd come home, he wanted to make the pasta
He worked here
shoot.
17 years. How many years did you work there?
3 months. Get the hell out there. Damn. So one morning he comes rushing into my room, see, after he's hired. Now he's got a job. He says, telegram, we got a telegram. What the hell is this all about? The telegram, see. He wakes me up, opens up the telegram, he says, "You Italian hillbilly called me collect. Joe Jones, Detroit. General Tire Rubber Company." I said, "I'll be damned." This is the guy that I met at the Mayflower Hotel, the big whiskey up in Detroit, see? So I called him. I said, "Joe, this is Pete." I said, "How the hell do you know I was here at Cleveland Stamping Plant?" I said, "I called your wife." I said, "She told me where you were." He said, "What the hell are you doing in Cleveland Stamping Plant?" I said, "Joe, I got 3 kids, I gotta make a living." He said, you don't belong in there. He said, "I'll tell you what, how much you make there?" I said, "I don't know, maybe $350 a month." He said, "I'm gonna give you $500 a month guaranteed." Yeah, but I said, I don't understand about these guarantees. If I don't make the sales, I don't get the money. No, he said, "You're guaranteed, I'll give you a contract for a year." So I thought about it. I said, I could sell $500 a month. Barely made $250 a month, I said, "Too bad a deal." I said, "No," he said, "I'll pay your way up there. Come up here." Well, I went up there, make a long story short. He showed me the town and everything. I said, "Here I am in Detroit, big city, car just like San Diego." I said, "Oh my God." Well, I accepted the job. I said, "Well," he said, "I'll pay your way. We'll get you a house. Don't worry about it, Well, I lived in Melvindale, right next to the River Rouge plant, $125 a month, brand new home, 3-bedroom. I said, "Okay, let's go for it." Well,
Did you move the family up there?
yeah, moved and then, moved
How many kids at this point?
3. Moved everybody up there,
No,
3 or
4.
4, I don't know. Hell, when you got 6 kids, how the hell you know how many? It doesn't make any difference.
He had 4, and then I was born there. That's 5.
He was born in Wyandotte.
I was born in
He was
Detroit.
born in Wyandotte, Michigan.
One.
No, you had 3 and then you were born.
He had 4.
You were the 5th born in.
And Joe, Uncle Frank, and Don, and Uncle John.
I was very
John's
prolific.
older. I forgot.
And
Anyway,
then I was born in Michigan.
Yeah. I forgot.
I lost my train of thought.
Moved
Right,
up to
I'm
Michigan,
asking
got a new house, $125 a month.
$500 a month, John. Now you went on the floor.
So I went down, I said, okay, he
Start a
said,
new job on the floor.
start a new job, on the floor at 5919 Cass Avenue, Detroit, Michigan, right off the Cadillac Cash Garage. See,
Yeah.
right below the General Motors
Address.
building on East Grand Boulevard. I said, what the hell am I doing here? There's 3 or 4 salesmen there, and there's one guy that's really he had a white shop coat, like he had about 6 pins across there, fountain pens, badge.
Yeah.
Al Sayre was his name. Now, I had a couple of informants there told me, said, "You better watch this guy because he'll skate you. You got to be, when these people pull on the cork, you better get out there because he'll get them." Well, I said, "I ain't worried about that."
Over here.
Yeah, don't forget Dad.
Get goo.
If you get near 20, it's ending. I mean, it won't even make it to 20.
Goo. What do you got to say? Give us a word.
Something.
Tonight we're having steak.
Clearly, it would be about food.
You know, good eating, good company, great time.
Yes,
Can't beat the weather.
2 seconds.
coming slowly.